Welcome to the church family that is lifting lives through living love, inspiring hope, filling with faith, and transforming our world. These recorded messages are made available so that you might have additional opportunities to stay connected with us, and then you might learn and grow in your faith. God bless you as you hear the word today. And now, the message.
Hi, my name is Don Fry, and I am the coordinator of God's Breakfast at Fletcher Place Community Center. I started as a volunteer in June of 2010 and took on my current role in January of 2011. Twice a month, a team of volunteers from ZUMC go to Fletcher Place and prepare a hot breakfast that is served from 8:30 till 9:45. Anyone is welcome to come and enjoy biscuits and gravy, scrambled eggs, fruit cocktail, coffee, juice, and milk. We also get the pleasure of providing breakfast for the preschool children. Besides serving 5 meals each week, Fletcher Place also runs a thrift store, food pantry, and a very affordable preschool. In December, neighbors can shop for presents in the Christmas gift store. ZUMC participates in this by holding a Christmas gift and grocery drive in November. Before eating breakfast, everyone bows their head in prayer, thanking God for the blessings of the food that we share. We know the guests leave with a full belly and are better prepared to face the day. The many smiles and thank yous we get let the team know that our efforts are appreciated. As one lady said, "We know you love us because you give us really good orange juice."
Our scripture reading today comes from the 8th chapter of Luke, beginning in verse 40 and going through verse 48. Now when Jesus returned, a crowd welcomed him, for they were all expecting him. Then a man named Jairus, a ruler of the synagogue, came and fell at Jesus' feet, pleading with him to come to his house, because his only daughter, a girl of about 12, was dying. As Jesus was on his way, the crowds almost crushed him. And a woman was there who'd been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. She came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. "Who touched me?" Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the people are crowding and pressing against you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me. I know that power has gone out from me." Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. In the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she'd been instantly healed. Then he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace." This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
We try. We strive, we strain, and we fail. So we try harder and strain more and promise again while we cross our hearts and hope to die. We fail again. We want so badly to measure up, to get it right, and to be worthy. There's this painting in our minds of what life should look like, but our lives look nothing like that painting. We've made a mess, and we keep on making them. Messy grace. We supply the mess, he supplies the grace, and thankfully, his supply will far outlast ours.
Reflecting on this story, I was reminded of another book that I read a number of years ago by two authors, Eric Swanson and Rick Russo, The name of the book is Life on Loan. And in the book, they begin it by reflecting on their experiences in driver's ed. Do any of you remember taking driver's ed? I think in our church, I know of at least 2 people who are driver's ed instructors. May the Lord bless you and keep you as you do that faithful work. I remember my own driver's ed experience. I don't remember any particular wisdom or life lessons I received except to stay safe. But Rick Russo in particular, he says, my driver's ed instructor, she would repeat this phrase to us over and over again, and it's kind of become a life motto for me. The phrase was, pay attention at the intersections, because good things and bad things happen at the intersections. Pay attention to the intersections. Rick Russo reflecting on that, he says, I think about that's not just lessons for driving, but for life, because every single day, our lives intersect with other people and other opportunities to receive a blessing or to be a blessing to someone else. And yet more often than not, I breeze through those intersections just, kind of caught up in my own agenda. I'm blind to the other people that my life is touching. It's kind of like when I coach my son's soccer team. I'm constantly telling him, hey guys, get your heads up. Don't dribble with your head down, because when you're dribbling with your head down, you miss the opportunities, not just to see the defenders coming at you, but you miss the opportunities to pass to your open teammates, to share the ball and create opportunities for them. How good are you at keeping your head up at all the intersections of life? Today's story is about such an intersection. Jesus comes to a village. And when he comes to the village, as often happens, a crowd is waiting to receive him, a crowd of common folks and leaders. And on this particular day, one of the leaders instantly falls at his feet and says, Jesus, I need you. My daughter is dying. She's only 12 years old. Please, you have to help. Jesus says, of course, and lead the way. And he begins to follow Jairus and the whole entourage through the town. And their path takes them through the marketplace. Luke's gospel doesn't include the marketplace, but Matthew and Mark, they describe the pathway as going through the market. Now, when you hear it goes through a market, what do you picture? I guarantee it was not like Kroger or Walmart, our markets have these big, wide aisles that you can get a shopping cart by and nod politely. No, in other countries, markets are closely pressed together. I think of the markets I experienced in Haiti. Now, in Haiti, in the village where we lived, most of the days were not market days. Market days were Wednesdays and Saturdays. The other 5 days of the week, the street where the market was held was mostly empty, deserted. Maybe 1 or 2 merchants, shopkeepers that kept their stores open, but for the most part, it was all closed. But on Wednesdays and Saturdays, the whole village entered into the marketplace, and it became this place that was teeming and bustling with life and energy. And people would sometimes take things up to sell in the market, or they'd go up and they'd buy. A lot of times people didn't have anything to sell or buy. They just went to go and be part of the action. Especially, I used to laugh. I'd watch all the teenage girls from the orphanage. They'd get dolled up because the market was the place to be seen and to see others. And it was a place where gossip was traded, where the village news was passed along. It was the center of life. And it was into such a place like this where Jesus passes. And you can just imagine the crowd growing and growing. And it's such that Luke says it almost crushed him. People were pressing in so close. And in the midst of that busy place, Jesus stops. Because someone touched him, he says. Someone touched me. Who touched me? You can almost see the disciples saying, Jesus, everyone is touching you. Like they're all crushing us. We're bumping and bustling. You can't get through this place without touching people. No, Jesus says, this person touched me with intention. This person touched me with hope, with desperation. Power has gone out from me, he says. Someone touched me. So who touched Jesus? It was a woman who lived in that village The Bible doesn't tell us a whole lot about her, except it says that she had a medical condition, a flow of blood. And she'd experienced this medical condition for 12 years straight. Now, scholars kind of speculate, what was this medical condition? Some suggest that maybe it was cervical cancer that caused her to hemorrhage blood for that length of time. We aren't quite sure. What we are sure of is that this condition that she had, it was not just a medical, physical problem. In that day, in that time, it was a social one. It was a spiritual problem. Because anyone who had this kind of flow of blood was considered unclean. What did it mean to be unclean in that day and age? If you were unclean, you could make other people unclean by touching them, by even talking to them, or by entering their homes. And so this woman, she was unclean, which meant that she couldn't touch other people. She was cut off from human contact. She couldn't allow her clothes to touch other people's clothes. She couldn't sit in public places lest someone come along and sit after her. She couldn't enter into any public space like a temple or synagogue. She was cut off from corporate worship. Whenever she was around food or water, those things had to be covered up, lest she make the food and the water unclean. Because of her medical condition, she likely could not have children. And because she couldn't have children, that means that either she was not married, or if she'd ever been married, she was likely divorced. Imagine what it would have been like to be that woman. To suffer physically, but to be so isolated, to be completely cut off from all hope of family life, communal life. Can you imagine the desperation? For 12 years. I mean, no doubt that she tried everything she could. Anytime there was a rumor or whisper of some kind of healer or some kind of remedy, I'm sure she sought it out only to have her hopes dashed again and again and again. Until one day Jesus comes to town. This Jesus who has been reputed to heal lepers and blind men, and she thinks, this is my chance, this is my opportunity. And so she presses in. She enters into the marketplace, which, given everything I just said about all the restrictions, the fact that she would enter into the marketplace where there are people and food and water all in close proximity, it's an incredible act of desperation, but she thinks, if I can only reach out and touch the hem of his robe, I'll be healed. Now, what gives her this belief, this idea that the hem of his robe would heal her? Well, you have to kind of go back a little bit. You see, Jewish garments in those days, men wore these long robes, but they didn't have kind of a continuous circular seam. They had a square seam to them so that they had 4 different corners. And to each of those corners would be attached tassels called tzitzit in Hebrew. And these tzitzit, these tassels, they go back to Numbers 15, the instructions that God gives to the people of Israel. He tells them, speak to the children of Israel, tell them to make tassels on the corners of their garments throughout their generations, and to put a blue thread in the tassels of the corners. And you shall have the tassel, and you will look upon it to remember all the commandments of the Lord and do them. So this is kind of like putting a rubber band around your finger. Like every time you would see the tassel, it's supposed to remind you who you belong to, the commandments of God, to obey them. Over centuries, though, of wearing these tassels, they became more ornate. And the amount of knots that the tassels had and the fineness of the thread and the color, it came to symbolize your authority. Dr. Gary Bird, she kind of says, it's kind of like military officials, when they are wearing their military officers, when they're in their full uniform, they have all kinds of ribbons and medals and stripes, and each one of those connotes a certain level of authority and accomplishment. He says, so it was in Jesus' day that rabbis had these elaborate tzitzit, and the more knots and the more colors, the more thread, it symbolized their authority. And if you wanted to appeal to the authority of a rabbi, you would enter into the synagogue and you would bow before them and you would take hold of their tzitzit as a way of kind of recognizing their authority, their wisdom to speak into your life. So the woman touches the hem of Jesus' robe. What she's touching is likely that seat. She's appealing to his authority as a rabbi. But there's even more than that. Rob Bell says points out this connection to Malachi. Malachi is the last chapter in the Old Testament, and it's really mostly about prophecy about the Messiah who is coming. And in the 4th chapter, the last chapter of Malachi, we find this verse: the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in its wings. When the Messiah comes, Malachi is saying he'll bring healing to all. But here's the interesting part. That last word, wings, in Hebrew, it's kanaf, which is also the exact same word that you use for the corners of the robe. The tzitzit are attached to the kanaf of the robe. And so there grew this legend, this belief that when the Messiah came, if you just touched the tzitzit in the kanaf of his robe, there would be healing. And so when the woman grabs the tzitzit or the kanaf of Jesus' robe, she's not just appealing to his authority. She's making a statement of faith that she believes this Jesus is the Messiah, the promised one who brings healing in his wings, in his kanaf for all who touch it. And she's right. As soon as she touches the kanaf, the tzitzit, her bleeding stops. She's healed instantly. Without Jesus' pre-planning or intention, without even his pre-knowledge, just touching him, power goes out and she is healed. But her healing is not complete because she's only healed physically. I think this is why Jesus stops, because he wants to bring a wholeness of healing to her life. He says, "Who touched me?" Not because he wants to shame her, but because he wants to elevate her. He wants to lift her up and restore her to society. I love how it says, when she realized that she could not go unnoticed. You see, that was her plan. I just want to slip in here. I want to be unnoticed. I want to be anonymous. And Jesus won't let her be anonymous. He says, "You need my attention." And so finally she comes forward trembling at his feet and explains who she is and why she touched him. And then Jesus says in response to her, "Daughter." Note that he called her daughter. Jesus doesn't do that much in Scripture. He says daughter. Remember, he's on the way to heal a daughter who is dying. But Jesus is saying this person is no less a daughter of Israel than the girl who is the daughter of a high-ranking religious official. They're both daughters of Israel. "Daughter," he says, "your faith has made you well." In the presence of the whole town, the whole village, everyone gathered there in the market, he says, "You have been made well. Peace be with you." When that word peace, it's the Hebrew word is shalom. It's more than just an absence of conflict. Shalom is about wholeness and completeness. Jesus is saying, may the ongoing blessing and healing of God be with you. He's healing her inside and out. When I hear that story, I reflect on a lot of different things. I try to imagine what it would be like to be that woman, to be untouchable, because I don't think that's something I've ever experienced in my life, to be untouchable. I can't imagine her desperation. I can't imagine her faith to reach out, to trust this Jesus after 12 years of trying to believe that he's the one to make her whole. But the thing that really strikes me is Jesus. Not just the healing that happens just by touching his robe, it's the fact that Jesus stops. He stops what he's doing. He has an agenda, right? Like, he is on a mission. Someone has asked him to go heal his daughter, and it's a time-sensitive mission. But Jesus is hyper-aware, hypersensitive of all the intersections of life. When someone reaches out and touches his robe, he is aware that this is an opportunity to restore a daughter of Israel, and he does not let it pass. Now, you might say, well, that's Jesus. He can do these things. No sooner does he leave the marketplace than messengers arrive from Jairus' house saying that the daughter has passed away. Jesus says, no, she hasn't passed away. She's just sleeping. And he goes on to Jairus' house and raises the little girl from the dead, and she is restored, same. Jesus, of course, can do all these things. And we say, well, that's Jesus. He has time. But Jesus was human like you and I. He just had 24 hours in a day. The point is that Jesus experiences an interruption. But he doesn't breeze by the interruption. He doesn't get stressed. He doesn't get frustrated. When Jesus experiences an interruption, he sees it as a divine appointment, an opportunity to express grace to someone who desperately needs it. And so we see that grace lifts. Grace lifts, always. And the amazing thing about grace is that it lifts those, not just those who receive it, but grace also lifts those who offer it as well. In their book, Outflow, Dave Ping and Steve Sodrin tell a story about a member of their church, a woman who is a powerful executive, kind of a mover and shaker, an important figure in her company. And this woman, she tells a story. It was around Christmas, and it was an incredibly busy season. You know how Christmas always is. But this day in particular is one of those days where meetings just stacked on top of each other, one thing after the where at the end of the day, your to-do list is twice as long as it was at the beginning of the day, because you haven't been able to check in. You ever have a day like that? And she had like this hour and a half, for dinner, where she decided, I can't get home in time. I have to get back to the company this evening for some kind of function. But she decided what she was going to do with dinner is she was going to run to the mall, because she hadn't yet Christmas shopped for her kids, and she was going to buy her son this thing that he's been wanting, some piece of technology that she knew he wanted. And she thought, I have just enough time. If I go to the mall and then I get back, I can make it all work. Except she doesn't take into the account when she's calculating her time how busy the mall is going to be around Christmas time, right? She gets to the mall and it is packed. She drives 2 or 3 times around the parking lot before she could even find a space. She's already stressed, like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make this work. She dashes into the mall, turns the corner, and then she sees the Apple store. And the line is out the door, and she's just devastated. She doesn't know when she's going to find time to get back to the mall, but she doesn't know, what is she going to do? And so while she's thinking, do I wait in line and show up late for my company thing, or do I just leave and figure it out? While she's trying to figure out what to do, she ducks into a bathroom. And she's kind of lost in her own thoughts, and then she's brought up by surprise when she opens the door, and there in front of her is a man bouncing a baby. She thinks, did I walk in the wrong bathroom? Was I that distracted? No. Then she begins to take in the whole scene, the whole picture. Over at the hand dryer, there's a woman who has a baby's outfit, that she's trying desperately to dry, and she can tell the outfit's been soiled in some way. The baby must have had some kind of a blowout, And then she sees the baby, and it's bare naked, and the father's trying to bounce and keep it steady, but babies don't like that kind of noise from the hand dryer, so the baby's wailing. It's loud and chaotic, and in that moment, she knows what she needs to do. She turns around without saying a word. She remembered when she came in the mall, there was a children's clothing store, and so she runs into the store, grabs 2 or 3 outfits, checks out, hurries back to the bathroom, hoping that the family is still there. Thankful when she opens the door, they are still there. And she hasn't really planned this out. She doesn't know what she's doing. She just holds out the bag of clothes and she says, Merry Christmas. God bless you. And the family's kind of shocked. They don't know how to reply. They say thank you. And then she leaves. That's it. She says, I don't know what happened to that family. I don't know what my little gift did for them, if it changed their Christmas season. Here's what I do know. When I got back in my car, I wasn't empty anymore. I wasn't stressed. I wasn't frustrated. I was full. I was peaceful and joyful again. See, grace lifts those who receive and those who offer Grace lifts. That's why the mission of our church, which was formulated long before I ever got here, but that's why the mission of our church is to lift the human spirit to be touched by the divine. You see, it's God who brings the healing. It's God who brings the shalom and wholeness into our lives and into our world. But our job is just to lift, to lift, to lift every single day. To help make that, kind of put some structure around it, Pastor Glenn kind of made an acronym out of that word, lift, and he said, we live love, we inspire with hope, we fill with faith, and we transform the world. So on the left side, the first letter of each word forms lift with an extra T, the way it's formatted there, but lift. But what I like is the words on the right. Love, hope, faith. Those are the three great virtues from the Apostle Paul. The great faith, hope, and love, these three remain, but the greatest of these is love. And so Glenn, I read the document this week of when he first launched this vision. He said, each day we should ask ourselves, who do we love this day? How did our actions inspire hope in someone else? Who do we fill with faith? Every day we should be able to ask ourselves and give an accounting, who did I lift today? Until it becomes just a way of being, a way of living in the world that we lift, we lift, we lift. It's not just here on Sundays when we get lifted. It's Monday through Saturday that we lift others with God's grace and love. I knew I was preaching about this week, and so I tried it out. And you know what I found? I found it's harder than it sounds. There were some days I got to the end of my day and I thought, I got caught up in my own intersection, in my own agenda. I dribbled with my head down. I went through the intersections all day long, and I missed the opportunities. I can't think of a single person I lifted today. But then I pray, God, help me to see the missed opportunities. Open my eyes as I go through the intersections, because we all have those opportunities each and every day. Even if it's only by praying for someone else, we have the opportunities to lift others. And the amazing thing is that when we lift others, God comes and he lifts us as well. So may God open our eyes to those divine appointments, those daily intersections where his grace is present and where we can experience the uplifting power of God. Amen.